The hidden truth about desire. What Deleuze knew that Freud feared. What if everything you believe about yourself is a carefully constructed lie? Not just a mistake, but the most sophisticated prison ever designed by society. Since childhood, you have been told that you are one person, with one identity, with one destiny to fulfill. But what if none of that was ever true? Imagine for a moment that the you think you know, the coherent self you were taught to protect and perfect, does not exist in the way you were told. Imagine that the story of a unified identity was not a natural truth, but a fabrication designed to keep you controllable, predictable, and above all, useful to systems of power. The very first breath you took was already being coded, organized, channeled into predetermined paths. Your desires labeled as good or bad, your body assigned functions and limits, your mind taught to think in lines when reality flows in rhizomes. But what if that organization itself was the trap? What if the idea that you must be someone was the foundation of your chains? The power of this question shakes every institution, every system of control, every promise of normality. Because if your identity was never fixed, if the self is not a stable core but a multiplicity of flows and becomings, then the entire structure of control collapses, and with it, the authority of those who claim to know who you should be. Tonight we journey into the heart of this radical possibility, guided by the voice of one man who dared to think beyond the limits imposed on thought itself. A man whose ideas were so dangerous that academia struggled to contain them, whose concepts threatened to dissolve the very foundations of psychology, politics, and philosophy. His name, Gilles Deleuze. Who was Deleuze? Gilles Deleuze was not just another philosopher lost in abstract theory. He was a man who lived thought as rebellion, who transformed philosophy into a weapon against every system that seeks to capture, organize, and control life itself. Born in Paris in 1925, he witnessed the collapse of old certainties and dedicated his life to demolishing what remained. His books were not banned like Spinoza's, but something perhaps more insidious happened. They were ignored, dismissed, called incomprehensible by those who feared where his thinking might lead. Why? Because Deleuze dared to say what no psychologist, no political theorist, no philosopher of consciousness could tolerate: that you are not one, that identity is a trap, that desire is not lack but production, that the self you protect so carefully is the very chain that binds you. Deleuze's vision was not of a world organized in hierarchies, like a tree with roots and branches. He spoke of the rhizome, a horizontal network of connections with no center, no origin, no destination. Everything connects to everything else in unexpected ways. Your thoughts, your desires, your very body are not governed by a single organizing principle, but flow in multiple directions simultaneously. This changed everything. If there is no central self, no core identity, then who are you? For Deleuze, you are a multiplicity, a collection of forces, flows, and becomings that never settle into a fixed form. You are not a noun, but a verb, not a being, but a becoming. And in declaring this, Deleuze struck at the root of every institution built on the illusion of stable identity. The myth of unified identity. Perhaps Deleuze's most liberating and terrifying insight is this: you are not one. The unified self you were taught to cultivate, defend, and perfect is a fiction. Inside what you call I, there are multitudes, countless flows of desire, thought, sensation, memory, all intersecting, diverging, connecting in ways that have nothing to do with the coherent story you tell yourself. Think of a river. We give it a name. We speak of it as if it were a single entity. But the river is thousands of currents, eddies, flows of water, each with its own speed and direction, carrying sediment, life, debris. The unity is an illusion created by language, by the need to organize chaos into manageable categories. You are that river. What you call your identity is just the temporary organization of multiple flows. This multiplicity is not chaos, it's freedom. When you stop trying to be one coherent person, when you stop forcing all your contradictions into a single narrative, you discover something extraordinary. You can become anything. Not in the sense of pretending or transforming from one fixed state to another, but in the sense of allowing your multiplicities to express themselves without the tyranny of unity. Traditional psychology pathologizes this. It calls multiplicity disorder, fragmentation, split personality. It seeks to restore the unified self, to heal the fractures. But Deleuze reveals this healing as violence, the violence of forcing infinite flows into a single channel, of making you small enough to fit the categories that make you useful, predictable, controllable. How power uses your identity. Behind every story of unified identity lies a structure of power as old as civilization itself. If you can be convinced that you are one person with one proper path, then your life becomes readable, predictable, usable by systems that require your compliance. The unified self is not a natural fact. It's a political necessity. Think of how institutions handle you. Schools assign you a single track. Jobs demand you perform a specific role. Medicine diagnoses you with unified disorders. Law treats you as a responsible individual. None of this works if you're a multiplicity. If your desires flow in rhizomatic patterns, if your body refuses its assigned functions, the unified self is the interface between you and power. Deleuze, working with psychoanalyst Félix Guattari, showed how capitalism and psychoanalysis work together to maintain this fiction. Capitalism needs you to be a consistent consumer, worker, citizen. Psychoanalysis provides the technology to repair you when your multiplicities threaten to break through, when your desires start flowing in unprofitable directions, when your body rebels against its organization. But what if you refuse the repair? What if you recognize that your so-called disorders are actually your multiplicities trying to express themselves? What if your anxiety is not a chemical imbalance, but a sign that you're being forced into patterns that violate your flows? What if your depression is not lack, but exhaustion from pretending to be one when you are many? This is where Deleuze becomes truly dangerous. He doesn't just critique power, he shows you how to escape it. Not through revolution in the traditional sense, but through lines of flight, through becoming imperceptible, through allowing your desires to produce realities that serve no system. The greatest act of resistance is not to fight power, but to flow where it cannot follow. Curiosities about Deleuze's life. Deleuze lived his philosophy in ways both profound and tragic. He spent decades teaching, writing, thinking through concepts that most found incomprehensible. His lectures at Vincennes University became legendary, packed with students, artists, activists, all hungry for a philosophy that didn't just interpret the world, but gave them weapons to transform it. He rarely appeared in public, gave almost no interviews, refused the celebrity that other French intellectuals cultivated. Why? Because he understood that philosophy was not performance, but experimentation. Not about the philosopher, but about what thought can do. His reclusiveness was not shyness, but refusal to become a spectacle, to let his ideas be reduced to his personality. In his later years, Deleuze suffered from severe respiratory illness. His body, the very body without organs he had theorized, was failing its organized functions. Unable to breathe freely, unable to continue his work, he made a choice that embodied his philosophy. In 1995, he stepped from his apartment window, choosing his own line of flight from a body that could no longer become. Some call this suicide, tragedy, defeat, but perhaps it was the final becoming, the ultimate refusal to let his body be captured by medical organization, to let his life end in the slow decay institutions demanded. Deleuze lived and died on his own terms, a multiplicity that never allowed itself to be reduced to one story, one meaning, one proper end. His work lives on, not as a system to follow, but as a toolbox for experimentation. Every concept he created, rhizome, body without organs, desiring machines, multiplicity, was designed to be used, modified, connected in new ways. He gave us not answers, but instruments for producing our own questions, our own becomings, our own lines of flight from the systems that capture us. Practical application. So what does this mean for how you live? Deleuze's philosophy is not abstract theory, it's practical experimentation with your own existence. To understand that you are a multiplicity, that your desires produce reality, that your body can refuse its organization, this understanding changes everything. Start by noticing the contradictions within you that you've been taught to resolve, the part that wants solitude and the part that craves connection, the desire for stability and the hunger for adventure, the need for structure and the urge to dissolve all boundaries. Don't try to reconcile these into one coherent self. They are your multiplicities. Let them coexist. Let them produce different realities at different moments. Experiment with your body without organs, not through self-harm or neglect, but through asking, what else can this body do? What capacities have been dormant because they don't serve proper function? Dance not for exercise, but to discover new movements. Eat not for nutrition, but to explore new sensations. Touch not for sexual release, but to map new intensities. Your body is not a machine with fixed purposes, it's a field of infinite potential. Follow your desires wherever they lead, even when they make no sense, even when they serve no goal. Because desire is not lack-seeking fulfillment, it's production creating reality. When you allow desiring machines to make wild connections, you produce possibilities that no system predicted, that no authority authorized, that no market can capture. This is not hedonism, not reckless abandon. It's the most rigorous discipline, the practice of staying attentive to your flows, of noticing when you're being captured by codes that don't serve your becomings, of finding lines of flight when organization becomes prison. It means learning to think and live rhizomatically, making unexpected connections, growing in directions no authority planned for you. The path to liberation. In the heart of Deleuze's thought lies a promise more radical than anything traditional philosophy offered, that freedom is not something to achieve, but something to practice. You don't need to become free. You need to recognize the flows of freedom already moving through you, blocked by organization, captured by codes, waiting to be unleashed. This freedom is not the liberal fantasy of choosing between predetermined options. It's not consumer freedom, the freedom to select products. It's not political freedom in the narrow sense of voting rights. It's the freedom of becoming, of allowing your multiplicities to express themselves, of refusing every fixed identity that claims to define you completely. Think of what this means. You are not trapped by your past, by your traumas, by your identity as victim or victor, damaged or whole. Those stories are codes trying to organize your multiplicity into readable form. You can slip between the codes, you can become other, you can produce realities that have nothing to do with the narratives imposed on you. The suffering in your life, Deleuze suggests, often comes not from lack, but from blocked flows, from desires that cannot connect, from becomings that are forbidden, from your body's refusal to accept its assigned organization. What if your pain is not something to cure, but something to follow, a sign pointing toward lines of flight you haven't yet discovered? To live in this freedom is terrifying because it offers no guarantees, no fixed ground, no stable self to fall back on. But it also means you are never finished, never completely captured, never fully known. You remain a mystery even to yourself, a multiplicity producing new configurations, a rhizome growing in directions no one can predict. Final. Deleuze's final gift was not a system of thought, but an invitation to experimentation. He did not want disciples following his doctrine. He wanted nomadic thinkers, creators of concepts, experimenters with their own existence. His work is not scripture to be interpreted, but a toolbox to be used, modified, connected to your own becomings. The call is the same today as when he wrote it. Stop trying to be one. Stop accepting the organization imposed on your body, your desires, your thought. Stop believing the stories that explain everything while changing nothing. You are a multiplicity. You are becoming. You are a body without organs, waiting to discover what it can do. In a world that demands you fit predetermined categories, this is revolution. Not the revolution of overthrowing governments, though that may follow, but the revolution of refusing to be captured, of flowing where systems cannot follow, of producing realities that serve no master. Every moment you allow your multiplicities to express themselves, you tear a small hole in the fabric of control. Deleuze paid a price for this thought. He lived in obscurity compared to celebrities of French philosophy. His ideas were dismissed as incomprehensible, dangerous, nihilistic. Even his death was used to prove that his philosophy led nowhere. But his concepts survive, carried by those who understand that true thought is not passive understanding, but active experimentation. And now those concepts reach you. His call is not to believe him, but to use him, to take the tools he forged and apply them to your own existence. Think rhizomatically. Create your body without organs, follow your lines of flight, embrace your multiplicities, and discover, perhaps for the first time, what you can become when you stop trying to be who you were told to be. The question Deleuze leaves you with is not, who am I? But what can I become? Not what do I lack, but what can I produce? Not how do I find myself, but how do I multiply myself? The answers are not in his books. They're in the experimentation you dare to undertake with your own life. The revolution is not coming. It's already here, in every moment you refuse to be one.